What really happened to the man who abandoned modern life to live in a teepee and became one of America's most mysterious survival legends? Eustace Conway, the so-called last American man, has captivated millions with his daring wilderness lifestyle, his survival genius, and his unforgettable presence on the hit show Mountain Men. But behind the fame lies a story darker and more complicated than anyone expected. From government battles to devastating personal loss, rumors of his disappearance, and shocking revelations about his fortune, Conway's journey is full of twists, and the truth about where he is now might surprise you. Born in 1961 in South Carolina, Eustace Conway seemed destined for an ordinary suburban childhood. But even as a boy, he showed signs that he wasn't built for the modern world. While other kids played baseball or rode their bikes, Eustace was sneaking off into the woods, studying plants, stalking animals, and dreaming of a simpler life. By the age of 12, he had already gone on his first solo camping trip, something that would terrify most adults. For him, the wilderness wasn't dangerous. It was home. At just 17, he made a decision that shocked his family. He left high school, walked away from traditional society, and built himself a teepee in the forest. There he taught himself how to survive with nothing but his wits. Fire starting, shelter building, hunting, fishing. These weren't hobbies. They were daily requirements. He sewed his own clothes from buckskin and ate only what he could hunt or forage. This radical choice wasn't a weekend experiment or a phase, it was a total commitment. While most teenagers were worrying about prom dates and college applications, Eustace was living in freezing winters without electricity, cutting his own firewood, and testing the limits of human endurance. From the start, it was clear. Conway wasn't running away from society. He was chasing something deeper. A life more connected, more authentic, and more brutal than anything the modern world could offer. And this choice would mark the beginning of his transformation into a living legend. It didn't take long before Eustace Conway's unusual lifestyle started drawing attention. Locals began calling him a real-life pioneer, fascinated by his ability to thrive in conditions most people would never survive. Word of his skills spread, and soon people sought him out for guidance, whether it was on trapping, farming, or even philosophy about living closer to nature. His reputation exploded after a 1987 New York Times article painted him as a modern-day frontiersman. Suddenly, Conway wasn't just a hermit in the woods, he was a symbol of rebellion against modern convenience. He became the subject of documentaries, interviews, and later books like The Last American Man by Elizabeth Gilbert, which solidified his status as a cultural icon. But what truly set Conway apart wasn't the fame, it was his conviction. Unlike many survivalists, he didn't just demonstrate skills for a camera or retreat for short stints. He lived it every single day. For Eustace, sleeping in a bed, eating fast food, or relying on electricity felt wrong. His sense of purpose came from proving that humans could live fully without the crutches of modern society. Yet, with recognition came pressure. People started questioning whether his way of life could survive in a world where laws, land restrictions, and television cameras had their own rules. While the spotlight brought him opportunities, it also introduced new struggles that tested his ideals. And soon, Conway's greatest dream, Turtle Island Preserve, would face challenges that no survival skill could easily fix. For years, Eustace had dreamed of creating a place where people could experience the raw lessons of nature as he had. That dream became real when he founded Turtle Island Preserve, a sprawling 1,000-acre property in the Blue Ridge Mountains of North Carolina. There he built cabins, barns, workshops, and living spaces designed not for luxury, but for authenticity. The preserve quickly became a haven for students, families, and curious visitors. People came to learn ancient skills, tanning hides, forging tools, farming without machines, even starting a fire with nothing but friction. For many, it was a life-changing experience, a glimpse into a way of living that most assumed was lost forever. But Turtle Island didn't just teach skills, it carried Conway's philosophy. He wanted to show that sustainability wasn't just a buzzword, but a lifestyle, one where humans respected the land instead of exploiting it. In many ways, it was his greatest contribution, passing down knowledge to a new generation of people hungry for connection to the natural world. Yet his paradise soon turned into a battlefield. Local authorities claimed his traditional buildings violated modern building codes. For Conway, it was a ridiculous clash of worlds, ancient log cabins judged by 21st century rules. He fought legal battles, faced closures, and even jail time over disputes tied to his land. Still, he refused to compromise his vision. Turtle Island was more than property. It was his life's mission, and losing it wasn't an option. The History Channel's Mountain Men seemed like the perfect stage for Eustace Conway. The show followed rugged survivalists carving out lives far from civilization, and Conway was the embodiment of that spirit. His segments, chopping wood, hunting food, preparing for brutal winters, resonated with audiences around the world. Overnight, he became a television star, but the cameras only showed part of the story. Behind the fame, Conway was struggling. Filming was demanding, and living life under constant observation clashed with his values of privacy and simplicity. The wilderness was his sanctuary, and suddenly it was filled with production crews and deadlines. The hardest blow came from his personal life. Eustace's closest companion on the show, Preston Roberts, wasn't just a co-star, he was his best friend. The two shared years of adventures, building projects, and mutual respect. But tragedy struck when Preston was diagnosed with an aggressive illness that quickly claimed his life. The loss shattered Eustace. For someone who spent his life relying on resilience, this was a wound that survival skills couldn't mend. Fans noticed his absence and began to wonder if grief had finally broken the man who seemed unshakable. Rumors swirled that Conway had quit the show for good, retreating into the forest where no camera could follow. Some believed he was done with fame altogether, but as fans speculated, the truth was more complicated. Because while Eustace struggled with loss, his story and his fight were far from over. As whispers spread that Eustace had vanished, theories flooded fan circles. Some claimed he'd suffered a deadly accident in the mountains. Others thought he'd abandoned television for good, choosing solitude over celebrity. The idea of Conway walking away and never being seen again wasn't hard to believe. After all, that's exactly what he'd done at 17. But behind the mystery were real struggles. In 2012, Turtle Island Preserve was forced to close temporarily after state officials declared his traditional structures unsafe. Shortly after, Conway was even arrested in a trespassing dispute with a neighbor. For someone who spent decades preaching harmony with the land, the irony was brutal. It wasn't the wilderness that threatened him, it was bureaucracy. Fans speculated endlessly. Was he hiding from lawsuits? Was he mentally broken by grief? Or was he quietly preparing a bigger comeback? The secrecy only fueled curiosity, and every rumor spread like wildfire. But Conway wasn't gone. While the public debated his fate, he was rebuilding Turtle Island, fighting in court, and holding fast to his mission. Behind the scenes, he negotiated changes to North Carolina law, pushing for recognition of primitive structures, a landmark victory for his cause. His story was never about running away, it was about persistence. And just when fans thought he was finished, he reappeared. Not just on the land he fought for, but back on the show that made him famous. When the cast list for a new season of Mountain Men was released, fans were stunned to see Eustace Conway's name. After all the rumors of his disappearance, his return felt almost legendary. Viewers were eager to watch the man they thought they'd lost. But it wasn't just his reappearance that caught attention. It was the revelation of his wealth. Reports claimed Conway's net worth was in the millions, a shocking figure for someone who lived without electricity or modern comforts. How did a man living in a buckskin shirt and chopping firewood amass such fortune? The answer wasn't simple. Part of it came from Mountain Men, which brought him global recognition. Another part came from Turtle Island Preserve, which drew thousands of visitors and donations. And then there was the land itself, over 1,000 acres of pristine wilderness, worth tens of millions on the open market. When Conway reportedly turned down offers of $20 million for his property, people realized, for him, it was never about money. Turtle Island wasn't an investment, it was sacred ground, his connection to history, nature, and purpose. Still, the revelation fascinated fans, the image of a man who lived like an 18th century pioneer, while quietly sitting on a fortune made his story even more compelling. For some, it was proof that you could reject modern society and still thrive. For others, it raised questions. Was Conway still the pure survivalist he once claimed to be, or something else entirely? Today, Eustace Conway is more than just a survivalist or a TV character. He's a living bridge between the past and the future. At Turtle Island, he continues to teach a new generation the skills that modern life has all but erased. How to track animals, tan hides, grow food without chemicals, and survive without machines. His latest project, the Wilderness University, expands on these lessons, offering structured programs for people seeking not just skills, but philosophy. Beyond Turtle Island, Conway has become an international voice. He's been invited to ecological conferences in Europe, where he speaks about a civilization that could live in balance with nature rather than dominate it. His ideas are radical to some, inspiring to others, but always thought-provoking. Despite his fame, Conway remains unpredictable. He grants few interviews, keeps his private life hidden, and often leaves fans guessing about his next move. Some believe he'll fully retire from television. Others think he'll keep using his platform to spread his message. What's undeniable is his impact. To many, he's not just a character, he's proof that another way of living is possible. In an age of constant screens, debt, and stress, Conway represents freedom. And yet, the question lingers. Is Eustace Conway the last of his kind, or the first of a new movement? His legacy is still unfolding, but one thing is certain. His name will always be tied to the idea of survival, independence, and the mystery of the wild. Eustace Conway's life is a paradox. Part legend, part controversy, and entirely unforgettable. From a teenager living in a teepee to a TV star who hated fame, he's never followed the rules of modern society. He's battled the law, lost his closest friend, and shocked fans with both his wealth and his resilience. Yet through it all, he's stayed true to one mission: living in harmony with nature. So the question remains, will Conway fade quietly into the forest or continue shaping his legacy as the last true mountain man? Time, as always, will decide.